Hello, thank you for joining me on my Creative Studios YouTube channel. This video blog is going to be about how to shoot stuff efficiently. You hear a lot of stories, and it's happened to me in the past, when you're shooting like a low budget indie kind of film, especially if it's one of those cases where you're doing it on your weekends and everyone's volunteering to help out and whatever, and the shoot, it goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months, even years. And you sort of say, oh yeah, we started making a feature like 2 years ago and now we're almost finished. And I tell people that my last feature I shot in 5 days and the one before that I shot in 10 days. And they seem to be amazed and ask me how we did it. And that's something I think I can talk about, because it's not a case of being like an amazingly talented filmmaker, but it's just a case of how you approach a project and how you prepare for it. And that starts way back when you're actually writing the script. So I'm going to use the example of Survival Instinct, which is a recent feature that I produced and directed. If you've heard me talking in the previous videos about rites of passage, that's the same film, we just changed the title. So what I did in preparation for shooting Survival Instinct is I went through the script and basically I storyboarded every single shot in the movie. There's just a few of them here, I'll show these in close-up as well. Literally every single shot in the movie, even just little inserts, shots of a hand, shots of a prop, everything, every single shot was storyboarded, and that included basically camera moves. So again, I'll show this in close up, but there'd be like little arrows that indicate cameras pushing in or cameras tracking sideways or whatever. So it's not only a shooting plan, it's also an editing plan. But this folder, we took this out every day. And the other thing I did as well was schedule using coloured post-it notes. There's only a few left on here now. Basically, there were loads of these in all different colours, and each colour was for a different day of the shoot. Because obviously, when you're shooting a movie, you don't necessarily shoot it in the order that it's written. So if, for example, at the start of the film, there's a scene in a particular location, and then midway through the film, they go back to that location, well, let's shoot those two scenes on the same day, obviously. So they'd be sort of marked out with a coloured post-it note. The reason why there's only one colour post-it note left is because obviously as we went through each day, the post-it notes would be peeled off and thrown away. So that's how I scheduled the shoot. And to say this folder here, as you can see, it's a bit shabby because this was like our Bible during the shoot. Took this out every day and literally just went through it, getting each shot, crossing them off with a coloured felt tip pen so we knew we'd got them. And what it does, obviously, it sort of takes some of the spontaneity and creativity out of the shoot, because instead of looking at the location, looking at the actors and thinking how we're going to compose this shot, you know what I mean, you've done it already, it's on paper, so you just kind of have to work through your list and just tick off the shots as you get them. You know, it doesn't mean you can't improvise some other shots if you've got time, or if something more interesting, you know, becomes apparent, you can get that as well. But basically, as long as you know you've got these shots, then you know you've got a movie. And so it stops you from going home at the end of the day and thinking, did we get that shot? Or, you know, or when you're editing, suddenly realizing that your shots don't cut together because you've missed something or it just doesn't work. And the other incredibly helpful thing about having all your shots planned like this is that you don't get any mistakes where you sort of accidentally cross the line. For example, with characters' eye lines looking the wrong way. Because shooting low budget, sometimes you might have a scene that's got two different characters in it, but maybe on the day you've only got one of the actors and you're going to shoot the other actor separately. So you have to make sure if those two characters are supposed to be interacting with each other, that the sight lines are correct, they look like they're looking at each other when you cut from shot to shot. So again, if you've got everything, one thing I did was to be very careful, and I do this a lot, is in my storyboards, you'd show the character's face and you have a little arrow pointing very clearly which side of the screen their eyes are looking off, and then obviously the other character looking the other way. And again, as long as you make sure you shoot exactly what you've drawn here, you won't end up accidentally crossing the line and shooting shots that don't cut together. So a good example of that would be the character of Rex, who's a teenage boy. We only had him for a couple of days, the actor. So all his shots pretty much were sort of inserts that were added in around the rest of the film. And there's an example here where the scenes of the main actors were shot out on location in the countryside, and the shots of the actor playing Rex, the teenage boy, were shot at the studio and just edited in to make it look like he was out on the same location.
Look, I'd better just wait here for my friend. Thanks anyway. Suit yourself.
The other sort of little trick to save time and money is actually minimizing the use of locations. So with something like Survival Instinct, it's kind of a survival thriller out in the harsh countryside, people getting lost in the woods and the hills. But it's amazing how much of it was actually shot either at the studio or within sort of a 10-minute radius of the studio. And we basically used the same little bits of woodland over and over. So there's some certain shots, for example, this shot here was actually shot literally at the back of the studio, and there's even some sort of fake trees that we built from light stands and branches just to make it look like we're out in the countryside. A lot of shots of people in a vehicle. There's a long dialogue scene where there's supposed to be a vehicle's out in the countryside. We shoot the wide shots, the characters get into the car, then we cut into close-ups, and that's all shot at the studio just with a couple of green bushes in the background that just makes it look like we're still out on location. Little tricks like that, and again, that's not improvised on the day, that's scheduled. So we'll have certain days where we know we're shooting at the studio and we can shoot, this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene, and this scene. It's all planned, and that's how we get a lot of coverage done within a day. So just to wrap up and go over the main points of what I've been talking about, I think the most useful things to take from this, again, are, first of all, breaking down your script into days. Again, using the old post-it notes is very handy. And then each day, storyboarding every single shot in extreme detail so that you know exactly what you've got to accomplish each day. You just tick those shots off and go home satisfied, knowing you've not missed anything, knowing that your edit is, by and large, is going to come together and you're going to have everything you need. And the best thing about working like this is you don't have those awful periods where you've got everybody out on location, your actors are stood around, probably getting cold, wanting a cup of tea, and you're sitting there going, with the sort of the mind going blank, and you're thinking, I don't know how to shoot this, I can't think where to put the camera, I'm not quite sure. Those awful moments where everyone gets depressed because nothing's happening and it's stressful. Okay, if you've got your shots pre-planned, you just go out there, you bash through your shot list, get it done, it's very efficient, everyone goes home happy. And that's probably the most important thing.